Hi guys, I wanted to make a quick video on how I set my Maschine Plus up for finger drumming. I have a sample here and I have a sample here. Here's one of the most simple ways that I set up my Maschine Plus. So I'm going to start with the melodic sample. And so what I typically do is I go through and I listen to the parts that I like the most, and I take the parts that I really like the most out manually. However, this is a very simple sample, so I'm just going to show you how I chop up something this simple, which I could easily just go to slice and then do detect and change my sensitivity to fit the sample. But sometimes I just do it on my own. So what I would typically do is I'll make a copy of the sample and move it to the top left, the 13th pad, and I will turn the end range up into where I want it, and in this case it would be the first chord of the progression. So once I do that and I feel like, okay, this is a good chop, I'll copy this chop to the next pad. And what I like to do is move the start knob all the way to the end knob. So start knob to the end knob, and what it does is it creates a new starting point for me. So from here, this would be where my next chop starts, and then I'll move the end to the next end. So that's what I'm going to do for the rest of these chops. And if you are moving your range knobs and it's going like really slow, what you want to do is you want to zoom out, and that'll allow you to go faster, make quicker movements. So if it's zoomed in like this, it's going to take a long time to make bigger movements. Okay, so I have 8 chops here. So sometimes I would just delete the original to create more space for my drums. So I delete that. And if you see everything disappear like that, don't fret. It's just because there's nothing on that pad anymore. So it's like, oh, what are we selecting? But if you hold down select, you'll see all your other sounds there. So I'll select my drum fill, which is, and I'll put those somewhere up here, and then I'll put actual kick, snare, closed hat, open hat, or something like that. So now I'm going to chop up my drum fills here. These are the pieces that I chopped from the loop. And what I'm going to do is, I hear a little clipping here, so I'm going to truncate this to get rid of all the grayed out areas. Then I'm going to use my start cursor, move that down to maybe a quarter of the sample, and then I'm going to fade out this part. So I'm going to press apply one more time, and let's see if we hear that. Okay, so now there's no more clicking. So I can do that drum fill while I'm in between these chords. One important thing, select all of my sounds. So I'm going to do select and press multi, and select multi. Let's make that sticky. And then I'm going to select all these different sounds. Go to the plugin section, and I'm going to make sure they're all one shot. Okay, so yeah, they're all one shot, and put the poly on 1. And then I'm going to go to pad, choke, and put them all in group 1. I don't think I necessarily need a choke on this, unless I wanted to do something like play these chords and then I wanted one of my drums to stop it. Then I will put one of these drums in the same choke as my melodic sound. So, for example, if I wanted this snare to stop everything, I'll add it to the choke group 1. So, like this. You know, so in a case like that, I would set that up in that area as well. Now, when it comes to my drums, sometimes I go to browse and I go through my loops and find some drum loops and take some kicks and snares out of those. And sometimes I pick another group, I press browse, get out of user, and I go to a kit that's already created. So I'll scroll and find a kit that fits the style of what I have going on here. So let me find a kit. Okay, let's just load that. Okay, so I will see if that goes well with what I have. I kind of like it. What I would do is I would duplicate that sound over to my finger drumming section and just do that for the rest of the sound. So now let's duplicate this here. So that's the hi-hat. Press duplicate off and then duplicate the other closed head. So alright, what I could do is go to the group section and put something to make it gel all together. So a compressor or a limiter. Sometimes I'll just put a limiter on it. Let's see. Yeah, we can do that, and we can also turn our fixed velocity on. That'll allow everything to be at the same levels so that you're not losing some of the transients when you're finger drumming and you're not hitting the pads as hard. So yeah, that's one of the most simplest ways I get started. Let's say you wanted to be able to differentiate between the sounds on the pads. And let's say you wanted to know, okay, these two are snares, and it'll remind you when it's time to do the drum fill. You can change the color of these, leave these the same, or you can even change the color of your samples versus your drums. So I would go to pad mode and then navigate to page 2. And under sound, I would change the color there. So say, let's make it green or blue. I like that color. Make it mint is what they call it. So now I have all my snares selected. And maybe I'll change this one because this one is actually in the group. The chop group with the samples. So let's make this one purple, violet. Let's make these fuchsia. Now you have your pad set up to where you know exactly where your samples are, you know where your snares are, your drums are, and you know where your choke snare is. So yeah, that's one way that I kind of quickly get into finger drumming if I just want to quickly get something down. Now, the other way that I do it is the same thing, but I just go in, the way I chop is different. So let's find a new sample. Okay, so this is a sample that I got off of TrackLib. I go in, I listen a few times to see what parts of the sample I really like or I feel that I can create a story out of. So on the parts that I find that I really like, I'll just take those little snippets. As far as this sample, I'm gonna actually pitch it down and see what that sounds like. So let's pitch it down a lot. See, something like that I would use as like the intro. That would be like a dope intro, and then I'll probably speed it up a little bit. Well, I'll change the tuning back up a little bit. So I'm going to duplicate that and chop off that first half. Use that one as an intro. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I like that. So I would chop that like that. And so I'll just go through and find other things that I really like. So let's get to it. Would we find our way to each other? To each other, to each other, to each other, to each other, to each other. Okay, these are my chops. Let me go ahead and select them all and go to plugin, go to poly and change it to 1. Now I can do this without it overlapping itself. And then let me go to pad mode and put the choke on 1. Go back to page 1, put the choke on 1. So here are my chops. this one I would probably add as some kind of transition. So I'm going to truncate this so I can add a reverb to it and fade this ending part out so it doesn't sound like it's cut off. Oh, I probably did too much. Yeah, undo. Okay, so, and then I'll go in and let's do the ice one. Turn the mix down some, make the size maybe a little bigger, make the ice a little less potent. Yeah, that's fine. Let's delete the original. Sometimes I do copy the original onto a different pad just in case, because sometimes I truncate all my sounds, but in this case, I can easily go back and make a duplicate of any of these. So it doesn't really matter. It's all about like just getting creative, doing different things. I'm gonna move this over, which there are ways to move things over, but I've found it much easier just to duplicate things. So I'm gonna duplicate this over to the pad that I want. I want it to be beside this one, so I don't get confused when finger drumming. So duplicate that and move that over. So then I'm gonna put this one here, so I'm gonna duplicate this one over to the last pad. I'm gonna duplicate this one in its place, and then I'll delete this. So and I might actually cut the first part of this so it's just yeah, okay. And turn that down. Okay, so now I'm going to venture into finding some drums. I do the same thing here. In my drums, I go in and pick out the sounds that I really like. I listen to it, see what sounds I really like, and then I'll go in and I'll copy them over to the finger drumming pad. So it's essentially the same workflow as the previous one I showed you. It's just that I go in and find like little specific things like this. I see that as like a transition sound. You know, you just pick different parts of a sample instead of picking by bars. You can pick like little parts of a bar, you know, of a saying or a phrase. Let's chop up some of these drums and see how it works together. Let's copy these over. Another thing I do is I add bass to my samples. So let's say an instance like this where my sample has no bass in it. It's just the higher frequencies. I will go to sample. I will go to sampling and then click zone. And here you can add a different sample. So I'm going to add in a bass sample. Let's add in another sample here. Let's see if that works. That's something you can do there. Add in bass. You can also tune the bass if you think, oh, this sounds a little off. You know, so you can tune it or higher. But from the way I'm hearing it, this works perfectly with this sound. Those are some things I do to set up my machine for finger drumming. I add colors to differentiate, or I separate them by my sounds at the top, my drums at the bottom. The very final row, I'll put my essential drums, and then the row just above that, I'll put my drum break. And then above that, I'll add in my samples. And then sometimes I do them differently. So I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions on this. And peace.